Two bikers walked into a Sunset Gas and go looking for trouble. They found a decorated military police commander. Instead, what happened next would expose armed million weapons trafficking operation Topple an international criminal empire and teach the Iron Claw motorcycle gang a brutal lesson, sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the quiet woman standing at the gas pump. They thought they were intimidating a lone woman at a small-town gas station. Instead, they picked a fight with one of the most skilled combat veterans in American military history. This is the story of how two bikers messed with the wrong military police commander and how their biggest mistake became their final one. Before we continue with the story, tell us where you're watching from. If you like this story, hit that subscribe button because tomorrow we have special story for you. The evening fog rolled thick off the ocean, blanketing the streets of Riverwood Falls in a ghostly shroud. Catherine Morgue stood at pump number 3 of the Sunset Gas and go watching the numbers tick upward with practiced patience. Her dark blue sedan, deliberately unremarkable, reflected the station's fluorescent lights against the growing dusk. 20 years of military police work had taught her to notice everything, while appearing to notice nothing. The station's elderly owner, Tom Wilson, watched through the window as he restocked the coffee supplies. Kate had been coming here every Thursday evening for the past 6 months, ever since she'd moved to this small coastal town, looking for something she couldn't quite name. Peace, maybe, or perhaps just a quiet place to forget the things she'd seen, the missions that would never make it into any official record. The pump clicked off at exactly $40. Kate's eyes tracked the reflection in her car window, noting the 3 men loitering near the convenience store entrance. They'd been there for 20 minutes too long for casual customers. Their body language screamed trouble to anyone trained to read. At evening, Commander Tom called out as Kate entered the store to pay. His silver hair caught the fluorescent light, reminding her of her father's usual coffee to go. Thanks, Tom. Kate's voice was soft, but it carried the quiet authority of someone used to giving orders in combat zones. She noted how Tom's hands trembled slightly as he poured the coffee. Everything okay? Tom's eyes darted to the 3 men before returning to the coffee pot. Just some new folks in town, been coming around every evening this week, asking questions about business owners, saying they can offer protection services. Kate accepted the coffee, letting her gaze sweep the store's security mirrors. The 3 men had separated, taking positions that suggested military or law enforcement training, though sloppy. Their leather jackets bore patches she didn't recognize, a stylized iron claw gripping a lightning bolt. Protection from what? Kate asked, though she already knew the answer. She'd seen this pattern before in other towns, other places. It always started the same way. They say times are changing. Tom whispered that small towns like ours need help staying safe. The mechanic down the street already signed up, paid them $500 for their services. Kate took a deliberate sip of her coffee, using the motion to study the men's reflections. Again, the leader, a tall man with a scared face and dead eyes, was watching her now. She recognized the look of predator assessing potential prey. Tell me something, Tom, Kate said, her voice dropping lower. These men, they mention anything about the harbor, about the new shipping operations? Tom's eyes widened slightly. How did you? The bell above the door chimed as the scared man entered, flanked by his 2 associates. Kate noted their weapons, poorly concealed shoulder holster under the leader's jacket, ankle holster on the shorter man, brass knuckles visible in the 3rd man's pocket. Amateurs trying to look professional. Evening, folks, the scared man said, his voice carrying a fake warmth that set Kate's combat instincts on high alert. Hope we're not interrupting anything. Not at all, Kate replied, maintaining her position near the counter. She had clear sight lines to all 3 men, her back to the wall, exactly as her training dictated. Just getting some coffee. The leader smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Name's Jake. My friends and I were new in town, part of a motorcycle club, the Iron Claw MC. Maybe you've heard of us. Can't say that I have. Kate took another sip of coffee, watching how Jake's smile faltered slightly at her lack of fear. Well, we're here to help the community, Jake said, moving closer. His associates spread out, attempting to flank her. Position times are tough, you know. Small towns like this, they need protection for a small fee. Of course, Kate set her coffee down slowly, deliberately. Protection from what exactly? All sorts of things could go wrong in a town like this. The shorter man said, his hand drifting toward his ankle. Accidents happen, businesses burn. People get hurt. Tom's hands were shaking as he gripped the counter. Kate could feel his fear, could sense how many times he'd faced similar threats in the past week. She thought about the quiet life she'd hoped to find here, about the peace she'd sought after 2 decades of combat and classified operations. You know what I've noticed about small towns? Kate asked, her voice carrying the same calm she'd maintained during firefights and hostage negotiations. They're already pretty good at protecting themselves. Jake's fake smile vanished completely. Lady, I don't think you understand how this works. We're offering a legitimate business opportunity here. Would be a shame if what Kate interrupted, finally turning to face him fully. If something happened to Tom's station, if accidents started occurring, that's not how legitimate businesses operate, Jake. But then again, the Iron Claw isn't really about legitimate business, is it? The atmosphere in the store shifted instantly. Jake's hand twitched toward his concealed weapon, but Kate's slight smile stopped him. Something in her eyes, something that spoke of violence, carefully contained, made him hesitate. Who the hell are you? Jake demanded, his confidence cracking. Just someone getting coffee, Kate replied, but her stance had changed subtly. Anyone with proper training would recognize the shift, a predator revealing itself. But here's some free advice: pack up your protection racket and leave. Small towns aren't the easy targets you think they are. Is that a threat? Jake took another step forward, trying to use his height to intimidate. Kate didn't move, didn't flinch. No, Jake, it's an opportunity, maybe the last one you'll get, because if you're still here tomorrow, if you or your friends come near this station again, you'll learn exactly why picking fights in small towns is a bad idea. The tension stretched like a wire about to snap. Jake's associates had their hands near their weapons, but something in Kate's calm demeanor made them nervous. They were used to intimidating civilians, not facing someone who radiated lethal capability. Tomorrow, Jake finally said, backing toward the door. We'll finish this conversation tomorrow. No, Kate replied softly, watching them retreat. We won't. As the bikers roared away into the gathering darkness, Tom released a shaky breath. Miss Morgan, I don't know what to say. Those men, they've been terrorizing everyone for days. Nobody stood up to them like that. Kate picked up her coffee again, her mind already racing through scenarios and contingencies. The Iron Claw MC wasn't just another gang running a protection racket. Their equipment, their training, the way they'd cased the town, it all pointed to something bigger. Tom, she said, pulling out her phone, I need you to tell me everything you've noticed about their operations, times, places, vehicles, everything. Why? What are you going to do? Kate looked out at the fog-shrouded streak, remembering all the times she tried to leave her old life behind, all the times trouble had found her. Anyway, I'm going to remind some people why you should always be careful who you pick fights with in small towns. She dialed a number she'd hoped never to use again. And then I'm going to find out what the Iron Claw MC is really doing in Riverwood Falls. Late that evening, Catherine Morgan sat in her small apartment above the local bookstore, cleaning her Glock 19 with practiced precision. The encounter with the Iron Claw MC played through her mind as she methodically broke down the weapon. 20 years of military police work had taught her to trust her instincts, and everything about the bikers felt wrong. Her laptop displayed satellite imagery of Riverwood Falls Harbor District, marking increased activity over the past month. Shipping containers moving at odd hours, new security teams that didn't match any legitimate Port Authority protocols, vehicles with hidden compartments entering and leaving during the darkest hours of the night. The phone on her desk buzzed. Morgan, you're supposed to be retired, Commander. The voice belonged to James Cooper, her former operations director from her MP days, enjoying small-town life, drinking coffee, maybe taking up gardening. Kate continued reassembling her weapon muscle memory, guiding her hands. You know why I'm calling Cooper. Iron Claw MC, they showed up on our radar 3 months ago. Started small protection rackets in coastal towns, minor weapons trafficking. But something changed recently. They're moving bigger shipments, connecting with international players. The pieces started falling into place in Kate's mind. They're not just another motorcycle gang. They're a front. Bingo. Cooper's voice turned serious. Adrian Blackwood, aka Razor, former private military contractor With connections to weapons smuggling operations in 6 countries, he's been building something big using small towns. As distribution points, the Ironclaw MC provides cover handles local. Intimidation. Kate moved to her window watching the fog roll through the empty streets. Why Riverwood Falls deep water port, minimal law enforcement presence, isolated location. Perfect for moving sensitive cargo without attracting attention. But there's more. Kate remember that operation in Baghdad, the one that went sideways, her hands stilled on the weapon. Baghdad 5 years ago, a weapon smuggling investigation that had cost the lives of 3 of team members. The case had gone cold when key suspects disappeared along with millions in military-grade weapons. Blackwood was there, wasn't he? We couldn't prove it then, but the weapons showing up now, same serial numbers. He's been building his network ever since, staying just ahead of federal investigations. The Ironclaw MC is his latest evolution. Kate checked her weapon sight alignment, remembering the faces of her fallen teammates. You're telling me he's here in Riverwood Falls? Intel suggests he's arriving personally to oversee a major shipment, something big enough to bring him out of the shadows. Kate, listen to me. If you're thinking about going after him, don't. He's got professional security teams, corrupt officials in his pocket, and enough firepower to start a small war. A motorcycle engine roared past her. Building one of the Ironclaw's patrol bikes, they were marking territory, showing strength, amateur moves that told Kate more than they realized. Cooper, what aren't you telling me? A long pause. We lost another agent last week. Sarah Martinez, she was investigating Ironclaw activities in a town up the coast, made the mistake of trying to take them on alone. Kate's jaw tightened. Sarah had been young, eager, reminded Kate of herself 20 years ago. They're getting bolder because they think they're untouchable. Small towns, isolated communities, they prey on places that can't fight back, or at least places they think can't fight back. Moving to her desk, Kate pulled up more satellite images. The harbor showed increased security patterns, professional teams mixed with Ironclaw members. They were preparing for something. I'm sending you some files. Cooper continued. Surveillance photos, shipping manifests, financial records, everything we've gathered on Blackwood's operation. Kate, promise me you won't do anything stupid. She studied the photos, noting faces, locations, patterns of movement. You know I can't promise that. Then at least don't do it alone. I can have a tactical team there. And no. Kate's voice was firm. Official channels are compromised. You said it yourself. He's got people in his pocket. Besides, a federal response would spook him. He'd disappear again, just like Baghdad. Cooper sighed heavily. You've got something in mind. Maybe. Kate opened another file, studying the faces of local law enforcement officers. Sometimes the best way to fight shadows is with shadows. The ghost team. Cooper's voice held a mix of respect and concern. They're not exactly official resources. Neither am I, not anymore. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Kate checked her phone as another message came in. Preliminary surveillance from Tom at the gas station. The Ironclaw was expanding their presence, pressuring more businesses, establishing control points throughout town. Just be careful, Kate. Blackwood's not just another arms dealer. He's been building this network for years, waiting for the right moment to strike. Whatever he's planning in Riverwood Falls, it's big enough to risk exposing himself. Kate moved back to the window, watching 2 more Ironclaw bikes patrol past. They were getting cocky, thinking they owned these streets, thinking small towns were easy targets. That's his mistake. Cooper, he thinks small towns are weak. He thinks he can walk in here, throw his weight around, and we'll just roll over. He's about to learn differently. And what about Jake and his crew, the ones you confronted tonight? Kate's reflection in the window glass showed the same calm expression she'd worn in countless combat zones. They made their choice when they threatened Tom, when they decided to prey on people who can't fight back. Now they get to learn why that was a mistake. The ghost team will take time to assemble. What are you going to do in the meantime? Outside, the fog had thickened, turning Riverwood Falls into a maze of shadows and silver mist. Perfect conditions for what she had in mind. I'm going to remind the Ironclaw MC why you should always be careful who you try to intimidate. Then I'm going to start dismantling Blackwood's operation piece by piece until he has no choice but to show Himself, just like old times. Cooper's voice held a note of resignation. No, Kate replied, checking her weapon. One final time. This time we finish what we started in Baghdad. This time Blackwood doesn't get to walk away. The call ended, leaving Kate alone with the growing darkness and the weight of memories she tried to leave behind. Outside, another Iron Claw patrol passed, their engines echoing through the empty streets. They thought they were hunting, establishing dominance over another small town. They had no idea they were about to become the prey. The midnight streets of Riverwood Falls lay shrouded in coastal fog thick enough to muffle sounds and blur shadows. Kate moved silently through the darkness, her years of military training evident in every calculated step she changed into dark tactical gear. Nothing that would identify her, but everything she needed to gather intelligence from her position. On the rooftop of Mason's Hardware, she had a clear view of the Iron Claw MC's newly established clubhouse, a converted warehouse near the Harbor District. Through her night vision scope, she counted 12 motorcycles parked outside, with 4 armed guards maintaining a patrol pattern that screamed professional security training. Her earpiece crackled softly. Shadow 1 Harbor Patrol, passing your position. The voice belonged to Deputy Maria Rodriguez, one of the few local law enforcement officers Kate had vetted and trusted. 2 vehicles heavily armed. They're definitely expecting trouble. Kate tracked the patrol vehicles through her scope, noting their movement patterns and weapons loadout. Not the kind of trouble they're getting, she whispered. Any word on Jake inside the clubhouse? He made some calls after leaving the gas station. Seemed nervous. A slight smile crossed Kate's face as she shifted positions, moving to get a better angle on the warehouse's side entrance. He should be. The past few hours had revealed more than the Iron Claw probably realized. Their security was too sophisticated for a typical motorcycle club. Their communications too encrypted, their movements too coordinated. They were military, or at least military trained, using the biker gang image as cover for something much bigger. Movement at the warehouse door caught her attention. Jake emerged with 4 others, all armed, all moving with the practiced coordination of men used to combat situations. Kate adjusted her scope, listening through their encrypted radio channels that Cooper's tech team had cracked. Shipment arrives tomorrow night, Jake was saying, his voice tense. Boss wants everything secured before then. No mistakes. What about the woman from the gas station? One of his lieutenants asked. Handled. I've got teams watching her apartment. She's not going to be a problem. Kate almost laughed. The teams watching her empty apartment were exactly where she wanted them, distracted, focused on the wrong target. Amateur move. A larger vehicle approached the warehouse, a black SUV with darkened windows and diplomatic plates. Kate quickly photographed the vehicle and its OCC occupants as they exited. 3 men in expensive suits. Definitely not bikers. Definitely not local. Maria, you getting this? Copy. Running plates now registered to a shell company in Panama. Same one that's been buying up property around the harbor. Kate watched as Jake greeted the men with obvious difference. Moneymen probably, or representatives from whatever organization was really behind the Iron Claw's presence in Riverwood Falls. The night wind carried fragments of conversation into her position. Blackwood arrives tomorrow. Final inspection. Weapons staged for transport. Her hand tightened on her scope. Blackwood, the name brought back memories of Baghdad, of an operation gone wrong, of good people who died because someone had sold them out. A sudden burst of radio chatter interrupted her thoughts. Perimeter breach at checkpoint 3. Unknown intruder. Kate smiled again. Right on schedule. Chaos erupted around the warehouse as Iron Claw members scrambled to respond. The visiting suits were quickly ushered back into their SUV while Jake barked orders into his radio. They had practiced responses, professional protocols, all now disrupted by a threat they couldn't locate. Shadow 1 Maria's voice held a note of amusement. Our friend is keeping them busy. You've got about 10 minutes. Kate was already moving, using the confusion to approach the warehouse from its blind spot. The Iron Claw security had focused outward, leaving their inner perimeter exposed. Another amateur mistake. She reached the side door just as Jake and most of the security team moved to investigate the disturbance. The lock took her less than 30 seconds to bypass. Not bad, she thought, considering she was supposed to be Retired inside the warehouse appeared to be exactly what it claimed, a motorcycle. Club's base of operations, but Kate's trained eye noted the inconsistencies. The reinforced walls, the military-grade communications equipment, poorly hidden behind bar decorations, the secured door, leading to what was supposedly just a storage room working quickly. She planted surveillance devices in key locations, photographed documents left carelessly on desks, and copied data from an unsecured laptop. The Iron Claw might have professional backing, but they still made basic operational security mistakes. A voice outside the main entrance froze her in place. Sweep the interior, boss. Wants this place locked down tight before tomorrow's shipment. Kate melted into the shadows as two armed men entered, their weapons ready, their movements suggesting special forces training. They were good, but she was better. You really think one woman's going to be a problem? The first guard asked, sweeping his sector. You didn't see Jake's face? The second replied, said something about the way she carried herself, like she wasn't scared at all. Since when does Jake spook over one person? Since Baghdad. Maybe remember what happened to Alpha Team. Their Kate's interest sharpened. These men had been in Baghdad too. Had they been part of the ambush that killed her team before she could consider the implications? Her earpiece crackled. Shadow 1, they're returning to base. Multiple vehicles. Time to go. But as Kate slipped out through her pre-planned exit route, she allowed herself a small moment of satisfaction. The Iron Claw thought they were hunting her. Instead, she just compromised their entire security operation. Back on her rooftop perch, Kate watched the Iron Claw scramble to restore order. Jake was yelling at his security teams. The suits were departing in their expensive SUV, and no one had discovered her infiltration. Maria, I'm clear. Tell our friend thanks for the distraction. He says anytime. Got some interesting photos of their reaction to his little game of cat and mouse. Want to see later. Kate was already moving through the shadows, heading away from the warehouse district. Right now, I need you to run some names. Cross-reference them with Baghdad 5 years ago, looking for any connections to private military contractors or weapon smuggling operations. You found something in there. Maybe everything. Kate disappeared into the fog shrouded streets, her mind racing with new possibilities. Those weren't just random guards in there. They were there in Baghdad, which means Blackwood's using the same team. Maria finished the ones who ambushed your unit exactly, and tomorrow night they're all going to be here along with whatever shipment. They're so worried about protecting Kate. Maria's voice turned serious. You're not thinking of taking them all on alone? The fog swallowed Kate's figure as she moved through the sleeping town. No, she replied softly. I'm thinking it's time to wake up some old ghosts. Call Cooper. Tell him we're going to need the whole team for this. One dawn found Kate in the back room of Tom's gas station, surrounded by surveillance photos and tactical maps of Riverwood Falls. The small space had become an impromptu command center with encrypted communication equipment courtesy of Cooper's off-the-books connections. The coffee pot gurgled in the corner, filling the room with the aroma that masked the tension in the air. Her laptop displayed the faces of 5 individuals, her old team from the Ghost Program specialists who operated in the shadows between official operations. People who could get things done when traditional channels failed. The same people who'd been with her in Baghdad, minus the 3 who never came home. The door opened quietly as Maria Rodriguez entered, carrying fresh intel from her night patrol. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't slept, but her movements remained sharp, focused. Harbor patrol logs show 3 more ships scheduled to dock tonight, all registered to the same shell companies we traced to Blackwood. Kate studied the patrol routes marked on her tactical map, noting how the Iron Claw had positioned their forces. They're preparing for something big. Those ships aren't just carrying weapons. How can you be sure? Because Black doesn't risk personal appearances for routine shipments. Kate pulled up satellite imagery showing increased activity around the harbor district. He's bringing something valuable enough to expose himself, something worth burning. An entire distribution network. Over her phone vibrated a message from Cooper. Ghost team is mobile 6 hours out. Maria leaned against the wall watching Kate work. You trust them after Baghdad? The question hung in the air as Kate Remembered that night in the desert, the ambush that had cost her 3 teammates, the intelligence that had been compromised, the investigation that led nowhere. They're the only ones I trust. Baghdad wasn't their fault. Someone sold us out, fed the enemy our position, our protocols. Blackwood, we could never prove it, but now Kate gestured to the surveillance photos showing Iron Claw members with military gore equipment. Same tactics, same equipment suppliers, same shell companies laundering the money. He's not even trying to hide it anymore. The door chimed as Tom entered with fresh coffee. His hands no longer shook when Iron Claw bikes passed the station. Something had changed in him since last night, since someone had finally stood up to Jake and his crew. They're getting bolder, Tom reported. Setting down the coffee, 3 more businesses signed up for their protection this morning. The hardware store, the pharmacy, even the local dinner. They're charging more now, saying prices go up when people resist. Kate's jaw tightened. They're consolidating control, establishing dominance before whatever is happening tonight. She turned to Maria. What about the local police response? Maria's expression darkened. Chief, got a visit from the mayor this morning, ordered to keep patrols away from the harbor district, called it a jurisdictional arrangement with private security contractors, corrupt officials. Tom muttered, just like in the big cities. No, Kate's voice was firm. Small towns are different. People know each other here. Community means something. That's what Blackwood doesn't understand. That's why he'll fail. Her phone buzzed again, this time a series of encrypted messages from her ghost team. Each one contained detailed intelligence on Iron Claw movements, weapon shipments, financial transactions, like pieces of a puzzle finally coming together. Michael's in position at the North Dock, Kate reported, reading the messages. Sarah's got eyes on their weapons cache. John's intercepting their communications, all reporting the same thing. Whatever's coming tonight, it's massive. We should call the feds, Tom suggested. Get real law enforcement involved. Kate shook her head, remembering Cooper's warning about compromised officials. Can't risk it. Blackwood's got too many connections, too many people paid to look the other way. We do this quiet, contained, just like we trained. Maria studied the tactical maps. The ghost team's good, but we're still outnumbered. Iron Claw's got at least 40 operators, plus whatever security Blackwood brings with him. A slight smile crossed Kate's face as she checked another message. Numbers don't win fights. Position, timing, and initiative do. Besides, we're not as outnumbered as they think. She pulled up new satellite imagery showing motorcycles approaching Riverwood Falls from multiple directions. Not Iron Claw members, but another group entirely, the Iron Wolf MC, led by veterans who'd served with Kate in other operations, people who understood the importance of keeping small towns free from corruption. Called in some friends, Kate explained, people who remember Baghdad, people who've been waiting 5 years to finish what we started there. Tom watched the approaching riders through the station's window. More bikers. How does that help? Because these aren't just bikers. Kate's voice carried the confidence of someone who'd planned operations like this before. Their former Special Forces, Marine Recon Rangers, people who know how to move in shadows and strike where it hurts. Most. Her phone lit up with final confirmations. Ghost team 6 hours out. Iron Wolves moving into position. Surveillance networks active. Everything proceeding exactly as planned tonight. The Iron Claw thinks they're bringing in something big. Kate continued, marking final positions on her tactical map. They think they've got this town locked down, everything under control. They're about to learn differently. Maria checked her weapon, the gesture automatic after years of law enforcement training. What's the play? We let them think they're in control, let them gather their forces, bring in their shipment, get Blackwood on the ground. Kate's eyes hardened as she remembered Baghdad, remembered the cost of failure. Then we remind them why you don't underestimate small towns, why you don't prey on communities that can't fight back. Outside, more Iron Claw bikes roared past the station, their riders projecting confidence and control. They never noticed the shadows watching them, never realized that every patrol, every threat, every show of force was being cataloged and analyzed. They think they're the predators, Kate said softly, watching them pass. Time to show them what real hunters look like. The pieces were in motion. The trap was set now. All they had to do was wait for Blackwood to spring it himself. Tom refilled their coffee cups, his movements steadier now, more purposeful. What happens when they realize what's coming? Kate's reflection in the window showed the same calm expression she'd worn in countless combat zones. By then, it'll be too late because tonight the Ironclaw MC learns why you should always check the history of small towns you try to intimidate. Sometimes that history bites back. Afternoon shadows lengthened across Riverwood Falls as Kate observed the Ironclaw's increasing activity from her position on the old canner roof. Through her scope, she watched their security teams establish new checkpoints throughout the harbor district. Their movements had changed, sharper, more professional, no longer maintaining the pretense of being just another motorcycle club. Her earpiece crackled with Maria's voice. 3 more SUVs just entered town. Private security contractors, high-end gear. They're setting up a perimeter around the main warehouse below. Jake's crew was pressuring the remaining holdout businesses, their threats now carrying a deadline. Through her directional microphone, Kate caught fragments of their conversations with shop owners. Tonight's your last chance. Prices triple after midnight. Accidents happen to people who don't understand business. The Ironclaw had dropped all pretense of subtlety. They wanted the town locked down before Blackwood's arrival, before whatever shipment was important enough to bring him out of the shadows. Kate's phone vibrated. Cooper's update: Ghost Team 4 hours out, but you've got bigger problems. Just intercepted communication suggesting Blackwood's moving up his timeline. He'll be on the ground in 2 hours. He's spooked. Kate replied, tracking another security team through her scope. Probably got worried about our surveillance last night. He's trying to get ahead of us. Kate Cooper's voice carried a warning. If he's moving early, your window for insertion gets a lot smaller. Maybe we should wait. Let him complete the delivery. Track him to his next. No, Kate's voice was still wrapped in silk. He gets away tonight. He disappears again, just like Baghdad. How many more towns get terrorized while we chase shadows? A burst of activity near the harbor caught her attention. 2 Ironclaw members were dragging someone from a small fishing boat. An old man Kate recognized as Joe Miller, local fisherman who'd worked these waters for 40 years. Maria, Kate whispered, you seeing this? Affirmative. They're searching his boat. Think he saw something he wasn't supposed to. Through her scope, Kate watched Jake approach the scene, his body language suggesting barely contained violence. The old fisherman stood his ground despite the rough treatment. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Jake's voice carried clearly through her directional mic. What you saw, there's no hiding from this. No running. Joe Miller straightened his weather jacket. Decades of facing ocean storms evident in his stance. Been fishing these waters since before you were born. Boy, seen lots of people try to own them, seeing them all fail. Jake's hand moved toward his weapon, but a sharp command from one of the suited security contractors stopped him. They couldn't risk violence now, not with Blackwood incoming. Instead, they escorted Miller toward one of their vehicles. They're taking him to their secondary site, Maria reported. The old fish processing plant. Kate was already moving her gear, silent as she traversed the rooftops. Alert the Iron Wolves. Tell Stone to move his people into position early. We're accelerating the timeline. Her phone buzzed again, this time a message from Sarah, her Ghost Team surveillance specialist. Multiple attachments showed cargo manifests, security rotations, and something that made Kate's blood run cold. A familiar signature on transfer documents, the same signature she'd seen on orders in Baghdad right before the ambush. Cooper, she called in, sending you confirmation now. Blackwood's using the same protocols, same documentation. He's not even trying to hide his connection to Baghdad anymore because he doesn't think he needs to. Cooper replied, Kate, these manifests, this isn't just weapons. They're bringing in something bigger, something worth burning. His whole operation to protect below. More Ironclaw members were spreading through town. Their previous attempts at subtlety have abandoned. They moved like military units, now establishing control points, monitoring communications, preparing for something significant. Kate reached her predetermined observation point near the harbor's main entrance. The increased security presence was obvious. Predetermined observation point near the harbor's main entrance. The increased security presence was obvious. Professional operators mixed with Ironclaw muscle, all carrying military-grade weapons poorly concealed under civilian clothes. Her earpiece crackled again. Shadow 1 Ghost Team reports possible conflict. Facial recognition got a hit on one of Blackwood's security contractors. Former Delta was in Baghdad. the night of the ambush, the pieces clicked into place in Kate's mind. He's bringing in his whole team, everyone who was there that night. This isn't just about weapons or shipping routes, it's personal, Maria. Finished, he's sending you a message. No, Kate replied, watching another convoy of black SUVs enter the harbor district. He's making a mistake. Bringing them all together just makes our job easier. Through her scope, she caught movement at the fish processing plant. Joe Miller was being led inside, 2 armed guards flanking him. The old fisherman's resistance had disrupted their timeline, forced them to dedicate resources to containing him. Amateur move. Maria, get word to Stone. Tell him to hold his position, but be ready when this starts. It starts fast. Kate checked her weapon, remembering similar preparations in Baghdad, and find out what exactly Miller saw out there might explain why Blackwood's suddenly in such a hurry. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the harbor, perfect conditions for what was coming in the distance. Thunder rolled across the water, a storm approaching. As if nature itself was setting the stage, her phone lit up with multiple messages. Ghost team accelerating deployment. Iron Wolves in final position. Surveillance networks tracking increased enemy movements. Everything was in place, just ahead of schedule. They think they've got control, Kate whispered, watching the Iron Claws forces spread through her town like a cancer. They think superior numbers and heavy weapons make them invincible. Time to remind them why that kind of thinking gets people killed. Because tonight the Iron Claw MC wasn't just going to learn why you don't threaten small towns. They were going to learn what happens when you bring a war to someone who's never lost one. The storm clouds gathered darker over Riverwood Falls, promising a night that would change everything. Kate checked her weapon one final time, the same way she had in countless combat zones, the same way she had in Baghdad 5 years ago, only this time the ending would be different. The first raindrop struck the harbor as darkness settled over Riverwood Falls. From her position near the old shipping containers, Kate watched Iron Claw members scrambling to secure their positions before the storm hit. Their previous military discipline was cracking, replaced by nervous energy as Blackwood's arrival approached. Lightning illuminated the harbor in stark flashes, revealing more security teams taking positions around the main warehouse. Through her thermal scope, Kate counted 24 operators, their movements suggesting extensive combat experience. Not Iron Claw muscle, but professional contractors, the same kind she'd encountered in Baghdad. Shadow 1. New movement at the processing plant. Maria's voice was tense. In Kate's earpiece, they're interrogating Miller. Jake's getting aggressive. Kate adjusted her position, bringing the processing plant into view. Through the rain-stir windows, she could see Jake pacing around, the old fisherman gesturing angrily. Miller sat calmly, showing the same quiet strength she'd seen in him on his boat countless times before. What did you see out there? Jake's voice carried through her directional microphone. Who have you told? Miller's response was lost in a crack of thunder, but his body language spoke volumes. He wasn't breaking. Kate's phone vibrated. Cooper's urgent update. Blackwood's convoy just cleared the county line 20 minutes out, but we've got another problem. Just decrypted some of their communications. Whatever Miller saw, it's got them spooked enough to change the whole operation. Through the intensifying rain, Kate observed more vehicles arriving, unmarked vans with reinforced suspensions, the kind used for transporting sensitive cargo. The Iron Claw's regular members were being pushed to outer perimeter positions, replaced by Blackwood's professional operators. They're not even pretending anymore, Maria observed. Full tactical gear, military-grade wings. So much for the motorcycle club cover. Kate's mind raced through scenarios, calculating angles and approaches, because they don't need it anymore after tonight. Riverwood Falls becomes something else, a forward operating base maybe, or a distribution hub. Lightning flashed again, and Kate caught movement on the warehouse roof. Snipers taking positions, their gear matching what she'd seen in Baghdad. One of them touched his throat mic, and suddenly all channels were alive with encrypted chatter. 10 minutes to primary arrival. All units maintain lockdown protocols. No unauthorized movement in the target zone. Kate shifted her attention back to the processing plant. Jake was on his phone now, his agitation visible even through the rain soaked windows. I don't care what it takes. Find those boats. Find out what else he saw. A new voice cut through the radio traffic. Calm, professional Terrifyingly familiar, this is Reaper 1 begin final sweep. Anyone not cleared for Operation Kingmaker is to be detained lethal force. Authorize. Kate's hand tightened on her weapon, that voice she'd heard it in Baghdad directing the ambush that killed her teammates. Now here, it was again threatening her. Tom Cooper, she whispered, tell me you got that. Affirmative voice print matches. That's Marcus Ville, Blackwood's head of security. He was there that night. Kate, he gave the order. Rain streamed down Kate's face as she processed this information. Ville had been the missing piece, the connection they could never prove. Now, he was here about to help Blackwood due to Riverwood Falls, what they'd done to other towns up and down the coast. Her earpiece crackled with encrypted transmissions as more of Blackwood's security teams moved into position. Through her scope, Kate watched them systematically clearing buildings, detaining anyone still on the streets. Professional, methodical, ruthless ghost team status, she demanded, marking sniper positions on her tactical map. 3 minutes out, Cooper replied. Stone reports Iron Wolves are in position, waiting for your signal. But Kate, if Vale's running security, this isn't just about weapons or territory. He knows how you operate. He'll be expecting good. Kate's voice was ice. Let him expect. Let him think he knows what's coming. That's when people make mistakes. Through the storm, she could see Jake's men forcing more townspeople into the processing plant. The Iron Claw was showing its true nature now, not criminals playing at being soldiers, but soldiers playing at being criminals. And at the center of it all, Joe Miller sat quietly watching everything. Missing nothing. Maria, get ready when this starts. I need you to. Her words cut off as all radio traffic suddenly ceased. Through her scope, Kate saw Blackwood security team snap to attention. 3 black SUVs had entered the harbor district, moving in tight formation through the storm. Primary is on site. Vale's voice crackled through all channels. Maintain lockdown. No movement, no exceptions. Kate watched the central SUV stop outside the main warehouse. The security formation was perfect, professional, exactly what she'd expect from Vale, exactly what she'd been counting on. All units, she whispered into her encrypted channel, prepare to execute. Remember Baghdad, but this time we're the ones setting the ambush, because tonight Adrian Blackwood was going to learn what happens when you threaten the wrong town, when you bring your war to someone who's been fighting longer than you've been alive. Lightning split the sky as Adrian Blackwood emerged from his SUV, his expensive suit incongruous against the tactical gear of his security detail. Kate studied him through her scope. Tall, distinguished, looking more like a corporate CEO than an international arms dealer, but his movements told a different story, revealing the same military bearing she'd seen in Baghdad. Vale materialized from the shadows, his rain-slicked tactical gear making him almost invisible in the storm. Perimeter secure, sir. We've contained the local witness and swept the area. No signs of surveillance or counter surveillance. Kate allowed herself a small smile. Vale's reputation for thoroughness had made him predictable. His teams were looking for conventional threats, federal agents, rival organizations, local law enforcement. They weren't prepared for what was coming. Status update, she whispered into her encrypted channel. Ghost team in position, Michael replied, his voice bringing back memories of countless operations. Sarah has override codes for their security system. John's ready to cut their communications just like old times.